This week there was a speech in Parliament that was made by Dan Carden, the Labour MP in Liverpool. I'd like to play that now before we talk about it, because it made a big impression on lots of people. So this is the speech that was made this week by Dan Carden.
If I could give one piece of advice to a young person today, it would be this: be proud of who you are and who you choose to love. It took me a long time to admit that I was struggling with my mental health and alcohol addiction. Actually, it took repeated interventions from the people who really love me. I didn't know. I denied I had a problem. I suppressed my emotions as I'd learned to do as a kid, and I told myself things were fine. Only looking back now have I been able to accept that in my 20s, I twice nearly lost my life to alcohol, saved only by the actions of others. Drinking was destroying my body. It was damaging me, my relationships, in so many other ways. Because alcohol addiction isn't about drinking every day or drunkenness. For me, it was about losing who I was over a long period of time. It was desperate isolation. It was shutting down my personal life, using a drug, alcohol, to feel better, but ultimately to escape, and giving up on living. I now know it's blighted most of my adult life. Fortunately, I have a mother who would protect me at all cost. A father who's the most generous, selfless man I've ever known. And a brother who supported me through all this without judgment. And friends who quite literally saved my life. I'm now in the third year of recovery, and I'm proud of it. Like so many in the recovery community, I am happy, I am healthy, I love my life, I have a wonderful, loving partner, and I appreciate everything that I have. But it took AA meetings, psychotherapy, and counselling to get here. And honestly, to stay here takes commitment and daily determination. I am in a privileged position. I'm all too aware that not everybody makes it. Addiction is fatal if not treated. I've gone from not recognising addiction in myself for so long to seeing it everywhere and doing its worst damage in the most deprived communities. Addiction is killing more people and ruining more lives than ever. It's killed members of this house, and yet we would still rather hide its ugly reality. I hope my openness today can help challenge the stigma that stops so many people asking for help. And nothing would mean more to me than turning the pain I've been through, but that I've put my family and loved ones through, into meaningful change. And I know I have to be authentic if I'm going to do that. Pride is about celebrating who we are without shame. In the end, it's a simple choice. Choose to hide or choose to live. My advice is choose to live. Thank you.
I don't think there's been many speeches made in Parliament that were as moving as that. And it resonates with lots of people. And one person who it does resonate a lot with is very a regular contributor of the show in Southport. Are you there, Barry?
I am. I am.
Yeah, I mean, I sent you a message and asked if you'd be up for speaking about it, and I had no idea about the personal story that behind your reaction to this as well. Do you want to tell people what happened?
Well, you know, a lot of people know I've been a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm 35 years sober. I was 35 years sober in March, and oh God, you know, I've watched this and I find it so moving. My eldest son Neil had his mother's alcohol problem, and oh God, I tried to fix him. You know, I tried so hard to fix him. Neil was drinking from when he was 13, maybe earlier. When he was 12, he caught encephalitis from chickenpox, and he was really, he nearly died. And it was a combination of that, Sue Ellen in Dallas, and my first husband telling me I drank too much that got me into AA. And I went to that very first meeting and they said to me, if you don't pick up the first drink, you won't get drunk. And it was like an explosion going off in my head, because that was my answer, because I always thought it was the third bottle. And you know, I was so lucky in AA. I have such a lot of gratitude for the people in AA who showed me how to become me again, because I got so much identification with Dan there, you know. And I mean, I know Dan because he's been a good friend to Southport CLP. He's come a lot of times and helped us and spoke to us, and you know, I remember my son Neil phoning me up in his early 20s. He'd been married, they had 2 children, and they'd separated, him and his wife. And he was drinking really heavily then. And he phoned me up one night and he said to me, "Mum, I'm gay." And I said to him, "Well, you know, that doesn't matter, because that's just what makes you who you are." I mean, that I had no issue with it at all. And I don't think I was that surprised, really. But he was drunk at the time. And, you know, I could hear him slurping back on the vodka. And I said to him, I'm more concerned about your drinking. And I tried to take him to AA. I tried lots of things to help him, but he didn't want it because he was just so unhappy in his skin. He couldn't cope with the reality that was him. And we lost touch. He disappeared for 3 years. I thought he was dead. And I used to get the Echo, you know, Liverpool Echo every night, and look to see if I could. There were sort of reports of men being found dead, because I thought this was what was going to happen to him. And then one Friday night in 2012, I got a phone call from Dorchester Royal Infirmary telling me that he was in there. He was in intensive care and he was in a coma, and that he had given them permission to contact me. What happened was Neil was HIV positive, had been for 8-9 years. And he was living down in Dorchester. He had a partner down there who had not been able to cope with him and had had to let him go. And he'd gone in on the Wednesday with breathing problems. He'd phoned an ambulance and they'd taken him in and he couldn't breathe. They'd put him into an induced coma, but before they did that, the nurse had asked them for somebody to ring, and he put me down as his next of kin. And I just, that was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I got my iPad out, I booked myself a ticket, and I got on the train at 6 o'clock in the morning at Lime Street. And I went down and I phoned my daughter. My daughter lives in Walton-on-Thames, and she came across and met me. And there was my boy in hospital, all done up to the machines, you know. And I walked in and I said, "Hello, Neil, how are you?" And the machine went mad, you know, and the doctor says he knows you're here. And I sat with him for a week, reading to him. I read him Fleshmark Close Rebus, because it was all about Edinburgh. And I read him that, and I knew he was there. I spoke to the doctor on the Thursday. His liver functions and things like that, the tests were coming back, and he was quite positive about it. And I went back in and he started fitting, and couldn't watch it. And I went out and they called me back in when he was sort of stabilised. And I came back the next morning and he had gone, and I knew he had gone. And they were going to do a brain scan, and the doctor said to me on the Friday morning that his brain was dead and they were going to switch him off. And they waited for my daughter to come across again, and we sat with him while we switched him off, and he just slipped away. And the one thing about it is he's at peace now. But, you know, Neil, alcoholism took Neil, because he was using alcohol to escape his identity. And what Dan said at the end there was so important, you know. I mean, Neil had tried to commit suicide 2-3 times. Once Sarah came and got me out of the AA meeting and took me to Arrow Park, where he tried to take pills, because he just couldn't cope with the reality that was his. And you know, in this country, we treat addicts of any kind as criminals, you know, and you know, they need to start treating this as a health issue, because people are ill. You know, nobody wakens up in the morning and thinks, I'm going to be a druggie, I'm going to be an alcoholic. You know, they slip into it because of their life. And I was one of the lucky ones, because I found AA, and it doesn't work for everybody, but it worked for me. And I have such eternal gratitude, because it made me, I don't regret any of my life, you know, because I had to go through all that to become the person that I am today. And now I can give back, because what was given to me freely in AA by people that had got through it all themselves, and it was their experience, their strength and their hope that they gave to me. We need to continue to do that and give it back to people. And what Dan did there was so brave. And in that place where Charles Kennedy was pilloried because of his alcoholism, you know, at least we moved on a bit, hopefully, you know, because Charles Kennedy was a good man. He was a good man who had principles. I mean, he might have been a Lib Dem, but he had principles. And there's very few of them in Parliament at the moment. You know, they're all out for themselves. But thanks for asking me.
Well, no, I didn't. I mean, I knew that you were in recovery and that you'd helped lots of other people. So I just sent you a message to see if you had anything to say about it. And then you shared your story about your son, and it just seemed like there were so many people I'm seeing on the chat who were talking about people they've lost in their family or friends who've been alcoholics or
you know,
addicts.
can I just say one more thing?
It's really sad. There's so many people who know someone who's been lost, and for Dan to come out and say there is a kind of way people can get through and find recovery is really important, isn't it?
Well, I for me, I mean, I was anonymous for a while, you know, in AA, And I took somebody that I worked with to an AA meeting, and she went back the next day and told everybody, this was in the job centre in Bootle, and she told everybody where she'd been and who'd taken her. And you know, it was such bloody relief that I didn't have to always pretend, because at that time it was unemployment benefit offices, and they closed at lunchtime on a Friday, and everybody went out to the pub, you know, and I didn't have to keep making excuses not to go. And it was such a relief to be me and out. And you know, I've always been quite open about my alcoholism, because I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not ashamed of it. My dad, and right the way through my dad's side of the family are the alcoholics. You know, I've got 2 sisters and a brother, and they're fine. It's just me with the black hair. And I used to have dark hair. It's red now, but me with the dark hair and the dark hair side of the family. And Neil was very much a berry. He was very much my side of the family, you know. But you know, I've got 6 grandkids now, and none of them have seen me drunk. You know, what a privilege.